Francis has begun a 5-day visit to Colombia, the first by a pope for 31 years. He was met by President Juan Manuel Santos and his wife, along with a welcome from dozens of children, singers and dancers. Francis hopes his presence will help build bridges in a country torn apart by bitter feuding over a peace accord with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, known as FARC. The deal has ended 5 decades of war which killed thousands and displaced millions, but many Colombians are furious that FARC fighters have been granted amnesty and some will be rewarded with seats in Congress. Francis has said he wants to encourage reconciliation as Colombia goes forward on its path to peace.
Thousands gathered in Colombia's capital, Bogotá, to greet Pope Francis as his Pope-mobile wound its way through crowded streets. At times, security struggled to contain the well-wishers. Speaking in Spanish, the Pope thanked people for the way they'd been encouraged to behave, saying, "This is called heroism, and even the youngest can be heroes. Young people can be deceived or wrong, but they pick themselves up and move on with smiles on their faces. Keep going." The Pope supported Colombia's peace deal, brokered after over half a century of guerrilla warfare, but many of the country's Catholics opposed the settlement.
Packing winds of almost 300 kilometers per hour, Hurricane Irma has hit the French territory of Saint Martin. The Category 5 storm brought a catastrophic mix of wind, surf and rain to the Caribbean island. Photographs posted to Twitter showed flooded hotels and streets, and local news footage captures the ferocity of the winds barreling through the region. Irma is one of the most powerful Atlantic storms in a century, and satellite images show the eye of the hurricane to be about 50 kilometers across. After St. Martin, Irma keeps moving eastward towards Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Dominican Republic. It may also make landfall in the U.S. state of Florida, although the storm's path is still uncertain.
Hurricane Irma is wreaking havoc in the Caribbean, destroying buildings and causing several deaths and serious flooding on small islands in its path. On the French territory of Saint Martin, at least 6 people have been killed and much of the island flattened. Emergency efforts are being hampered by difficult access and communications. French President Emmanuel Macron offered words of support. "We stand side by side with those who, in our own country, a few thousand kilometers from here, are destitute, have lost everything, sometimes loved ones, and that we stand with their families who on mainland France as elsewhere are living in fear. The whole country stands with them and all public services are being mobilized to come to their aid." The most powerful storm in a decade, with at times wind speeds of 295 kilometers per hour, Irma has howled past Puerto Rico, drenching it as it heads north of the Dominican Republic. In Florida, residents on the coast are preparing for tidal surges of 3 to 4 meters. Meanwhile, the authorities have issued evacuation orders.
We are being very aggressive in our preparation for this storm, and every Floridian should take this seriously and be aggressive to protect their family. Possessions can be replaced, your family cannot.
President Donald Trump said his administration is monitoring the storm as it approaches the U.S. Irma is likely to make landfall in Florida over the weekend.
Hurricane Irma left a trail of absolute devastation as it tore across the tiny Caribbean island of Barbuda with 185-mile-per-hour winds, destroying houses, snapping trees, and killing at least 1 person. Gaston Brown, the prime minister of the two-island nation of Antigua and Barbuda, described the island as barely habitable after a powerful Category 5 storm struck early on Wednesday. Describing the scene as absolute devastation, he said the storm had caused an estimated damage of $150 million. Aerial footage of the island after Irma had passed through showed a desolate, flooded landscape shorn of trees and foliage with overturned vehicles and scattered debris. He said Barbudan residents should be evacuated if a second hurricane, Jose, turns towards the islands later this week. Jose is forecast to become a major storm and pass close to Antigua and Barbuda on this weekend.
French police have arrested 2 people after finding possible bomb-making equipment in a raid on a flat south of Paris. Chemicals, gas bottles and other products were recovered. Police acted on a tip-off from a local tradesman who'd spotted the equipment when looking into the flat. It's believed the chemicals could have been used to produce TATP, an unstable explosive used by militants in several attacks in Western Europe in recent years. Meanwhile, Spanish and Moroccan police have arrested 6 people suspected of belonging to an Islamist militant cell that is said to have simulated decapitations. The arrests mark the first big raid since a double Islamist attack in Catalonia in August that killed 16 people. Catalonia's parliament has voted to hold an independence referendum on October the 1st in defiance of Spain's central government. The region's president and cabinet members signed the bill into local law almost immediately. They also approved a legal framework to declare independence within 48 hours of a yes vote. Spain's wealthy northeastern region already has autonomous powers, but somewhat full secession. After the vote, Catalonia's president said, "We call on the citizens of our country to decide what kind of future they want for Catalonia, whether they want the current path of autonomy with a limited statute or a new direction as an independent state in the form of a republic." But not all Catalan lawmakers back the move. Members opposed to independence abandoned the chamber before the vote, with some leaving Catalan flags on their empty seats. Eventually, the voting went 72 in favour, with 11 abstentions in the 135-seat chamber. The result was greeted by a rendition of Catalonia's regional anthem. A member of the national ruling People's Party was confident the bill would be suspended. Tomorrow, these new laws will be history because, fortunately, Spain is a country with the rule of law, where democratic institutions are effective. The Constitutional Court will declare it null and void. Spain's Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy, who is to hold an emergency cabinet meeting today, has vowed to use the full force of the law to stop the referendum, which he says is illegal. His deputy earlier accused the separatists of trampling on democracy.
US President Donald Trump has urged North Korea's biggest ally, China, to do more to rein in its neighbor after its 6th nuclear test. Both are committed to taking further action towards denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Trump and his Chinese counterpart spoke on the phone on Wednesday. President Xi Jinping said the nuclear issue must be resolved through dialogue and consultation.
We will not be putting up with what's happening at North Korea. I believe that President Xi agrees with me 100%. He doesn't want to see what's happening there either.
Trump was asked whether he was considering a military response to North Korea.
We're going to see what happens. We'll see what happens. Certainly that's not a first choice, but we will see what happens.
Pyongyang says its weapons program is needed to defend itself against what it sees as U.S. aggression.
저국소와 무강저국 건설에 강력한 보고민 수소탄의 결과.
Protesters clash with police at a village in South Korea as components of a controversial system to guard against missiles from North Korea are deployed. More than 30 people were injured when police broke up a blockade of around 300 villagers and campaigners opposed to the THAAD missile defense system. Seoul is installing the 4 remaining launchers of the US system on a former golf course in the south. 2 have already been deployed. It's in response to increasing tensions sparked by North Korea's nuclear activity. The decision to deploy the THAAD system's drawn strong objections from China. Beijing believes the radar could be used to look deeply into its territory and will also upset the regional balance of security.
E televidente, boa atenção agora para um espaço comercial. Agora nós estamos aqui no Informe Deportivo.